My name is Jay Bridgeball. I'm a real estate broker since 1988. I've seen the good days, the bad days, and the not so bad days. My passion is to educate consumer about all aspects in real estate. Actually, I sold over $1.75 billion in real estate. Now, that's a lot of experience. I went through many failures, many successes, and I've seen many stories that you will be amazed. Not everything looks so glamorous as it is sometimes. On Let's Talk Real Estate, we will dig deep down and I will take you step by step through every process, from buying your first home to buying a multi-million dollar investment property. We will have various people on this show. Lawyers, investors, we'll have mortgage brokers, appraisals, and everyone else to assist us to take you to that point. My aim is to break it down in such easy terms that you will be able to follow. So please join me every Thursday between 1 and 2 and let's talk real estate. Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate. It's our last segment for the year.
Yes.
Believe it? A few days it'll be a brand new year. This section we really want to focus into what to do with a lease, how to construct a lease if you are renting property.
Definitely.
Right?
And last segment, we actually went into a little bit of detail on why rentals are so important. And specifically this segment, we want to go over that a little bit and then get into the ins and outs of how a lease really works.
Yes, we want to get into the meat right away. Well, now a quick prediction as to real estate over the next 5 to 7 years. What will happen with real estate?
That's a good question, Jay. You know, everyone asks, so what's going to happen? And I know we don't have the crystal ball, but at least we can use some of the market data and give an educated guess on where things are going.
Yeah, definitely. Now, a couple of things we got to look at, irregardless, Amit, whether the market is going up or coming down. What's more important is cash flow on a long-term basis.
Right.
Right. Over the years, if you get 5, 6, 7, 8 rental properties, and each giving you, let's say, a few $1,000s per month, very quickly you'll find your cash flow would increase.
Definitely. And then when you have cash flow like that coming in, you really everything else tends to work a little bit easier.
Well, definitely. The nice thing about the whole situation in a bad market, there are more tenants because the guy sell his house and he got a rent.
Of course, yeah.
So in bad market, you can get better quality tenants as well.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Jay. Even in recent years, I've had people that say, well, you know, I really think the market is going to disappear. It's going to fall off. It's going to plunge. We're going to sell. Can you sell our house? And we sell them, and the market continues to climb sometimes.
And here, let me put it this way. I could see the market going up and up and up every year, on average between 5 to 7% increase.
Right.
Let me summarize it very briefly for our audience. Number one, with the new stress test coming out in a few days, actually.
Yes.
It's a big hype, but I don't think it will do anything much. What it's doing is just making people understand that if an interest rate go up, they can carry the load. They will be in a better position because they're qualifying to carrying a higher interest rate, but they'll be paying a lower interest rate.
Well, Jay, you know, that's been talk in the banks for quite some time. And when you actually think about it, the government has finally positioned things where everyone is a little bit safer. Because these rates are historically the lowest point in Canadian history. Now, if these go up, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
So when these go up, you don't want guys that are stuck on variable or having to renew to go from a $1,500 payment to a $3,000 payment. That'll break the bank for some people.
Definitely. So it's a protective
mechanism,
move,
yeah.
right? To take care of that. On the same token, we got 36 million people in Canada, 10% retiring. We spoke about that in one of our previous podcasts. And we are expecting a lot of new immigrants in GTA.
Oh yeah, and from what I was reading, I think they were saying so close to 40 or 50% of immigrants are either coming into Vancouver or GTA.
Definitely. So we are expecting at least, let's say, 100,000
Hmm.
immigrants in a year and a half time. It will put an upward pressure on real estate. Well, stress
Mm,
tests put a slight downward pressure.
right.
Demand will put an upward pressure. That will cause real estate value to go up substantially.
Right, right. Many of the reports have actually been showing that 2018 is most likely going to be a 5, 6, or 7% increase as well. So I think you hit the nose on the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. So if you find that it goes up an average of 5% even per year, which
Hmm.
is above inflation, in about 5 to 10 years, that's 50%. Let's say 5% a year, 10
Yep.
years is 50%.
Well, when you also look at the same token, these GICs at the bank are paying 1.5% right now, and that's money that you actually take and save. So it really is a stress to show that the importance of investing in the coming years is really going to show how you can leverage your money, the bank's money, and make a pretty penny
A
for
little bit of
yourself. Yeah,
profit.
yeah.
Now, let's fast forward. Last week we spoke about how to recruit and keep good
Yep.
tenants. We went through that process, how to prepare your rental property, how to search for awesome tenants, how to find awesome tenants.
Exactly.
You can go and look at our other podcasts and you will be able to learn that, how to
Hmm.
do that. Now, this week we just want to get down into what's involved once you find the right tenant. Very important is to prepare a lease document for them. A lease is really a contract.
Yes, and Jay, it's funny when you say lease because the majority of people they just think, okay, I'm gonna get a place. I just sign the form. It's a normal form, and you just sign it. But there's a lot of nitty gritty inside there, and you might be signing away things that maybe aren't even legal.
Definitely, you got to be careful what's in a lease. So, as landlords, right, it's good to know what you are giving to your tenant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as tenants, also want to know what you are getting into,
Yep.
right? For example, a lease talks. We have a copy of our lease. It's a two-page document that we use
Mm.
at the Bridge team.
Yeah, and we can put it up now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we can really put it up so you can have a look at it and see what it entails. The first part in this list addresses here your rental property, where it's located, and what's important.
Mm.
Who are your tenants and who are occupants?
Well, you see, and that's a very important point you bring up because one person can be signing the lease, but they could be signing it and having Tom, Dick, and Harry living in the property.
Right. So definitely now the lease agreement states that hey, we have A and B as tenants,
Hmm.
and everyone else as occupants.
Right.
And it states that in the event the tenant, for some reason, is no longer there,
Hmm.
could be debt, could be that they moved on to somewhere else,
Hmm.
then the tenancy become void. The occupant are not the tenant,
So
right?
it's a fine line, and you see the thing is, you may not have understood that legally that is you need a definition of those two different parties.
Yeah, you want to define it up front, and
Hmm.
that's the whole idea of getting the lease done correctly.
Hmm.
And for our viewers, just want to let you know that we are passionate about educating
Hmm.
our consumers. Okay, we offer free in-house
Yeah.
consultation, 1 hour free. There is no cost, no obligation. It's just our way of giving back to you,
Hmm.
right? The next thing we are having our workshop. We will be covering all these things to first-time investors.
Yep.
What to do, what not to do. Not necessarily first-time investors. The way we handle it is that in this session we'll have a panel
Hmm.
of people. We all sit around in one huge square,
Yep.
and we all be chatting about every issue.
Hmm.
So we'll find someone who have more experience will contribute. Someone who ask a question will get to learn as well.
It's a really great environment because it's just free, open forum, and everyone brings something to the table, and everyone learns something, and that's what's
That's true. We
important.
bring and take from the
Hmm.
table, right? Sounds like New Year's Eve party. Right. So now let's get back on track. We talk about the occupants,
Hmm.
and we mention also what is involved, who are occupants, what they signed. Now, why that is important as well. In the event there is a fire,
Hmm.
at least you can give this to the authorities and say, hey,
Yes.
these are the occupants and these are the tenants that are living in there.
Yes, and because in many cases a lease outlines the person that is leasing the property, but it does not go into detail with who is going to be occupying. So that's very important in case of emergency personnel like firefighters, police, things like that. Okay.
So the next thing you want to find in your lease
Hmm.
is the terms.
Right.
What when they are renting to when they will be leaving.
Hmm.
Now, the term do not necessarily mean a paying term.
Oh.
It could be a month or two. Occupancy date can
Hmm.
be even before
Yep.
the rental period start.
Well, many times, you end up in a situation where moving never works out perfectly. As you know, Jay, so there's always an extra day here or a day short on this end. And if the property is vacant, you could have a lease or a lease agreement or a term starting from Tuesday, but you need that stuff to be moved in on Monday. So occupancy
Definitely,
period, yeah.
that's important. Actually, in commercial, we do it more than residential,
Hmm.
where we may give the tenant about 3 months
Hmm.
ahead of time so that they could renovate.
Right.
Right, so that's the occupancy period, and
Mm.
then we start after they finish renovating. It starts.
Got you.
But now, what is also important here within the term is that you have right in that lease agreement as your landlord
Hmm.
to state that, hey, in event for some reason I cannot give you this premise on the day I promise, you can't hold me liable.
Right.
All right, because it could be for different reasons.
Hmm.
Maybe the current tenant is in there, didn't move out
And
as yet.
and you couldn't
And
get rid of
I
them.
am caught now in a lease where I signed with you that you are moving in, but the other tenant did not move in.
And you can't fulfill it.
So
Hmm.
it's right in the document here
Yeah.
that, you know what, in event of a delay or anything, you as the tenant, you understand this,
Mm.
and you will not hold me as the landlord responsible.
And you see, this is much more in detail than you would see in a standard offer to lease or something like that. So these documents are very important to protect both parties.
Definitely. We have a lot more to cover. So, tell you what, let's take a short break and we'll be back with segment 2 about what you need to get in your lease.
This holiday season, be sure to pick up your copy of the Toronto Caribbean newspaper and check out all the specials from local businesses right here in our community. Help build a bigger, better, and stronger community with your support. Happy holidays from the Toronto Caribbean newspaper. Available at your favorite Caribbean location or online at torontocaribbean.com.
Welcome back. So, we are talking about our tenancy agreement,
Yeah.
what to get in your lease. We just spoke shortly about
All the ins, yeah, the ins and
terms.
outs and the terms and who's actually occupying the
That's
premise.
very important.
Mm.
So let's move further now. We talk about the terms. When you're renting something,
Mhm.
a property to someone, do you know that you can literally rent them the appliances separately?
Well, that's a good point there, Jay, because now it's becoming so common that even the owner is renting appliances or different items from a hot water tank to a furnace. So items like this, you can actually transfer that to the tenant now.
Yeah, a good thing, a good practice is that you're renting your premise
Hmm.
under the Landlord and Tenant Act
Hmm.
to the tenant. But in addition to that, which will there some gray area too.
On raising rent and different things
Right,
like that.
definitely you can raise rent on the premise
Mm-hmm.
at the allowable
One and a
rental
half percent.
rate
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that every year is being set by the government.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're renting the appliances separately,
Mm-hmm.
right, your air condition is being rental, other things you can literally increase those as well.
Really? So that's kind of a little bit of a way to sidestep certain areas, because very much more often than not in Peel region, Toronto in general, property taxes are going up. Everything is increasing, and that 1.5% that's allocated by the landlord and tenant board may not suffice for the increases each year.
Right. We are not telling you to go and really harm your tenant, but
Of course.
basically, in my cases, what I do in many of my leases is that
Mhm.
I put that as added incentive.
Mm.
Said, okay, here, you know what, the appliances you will be paying for fridge, stove, washer, and dryer. You'll pay an extra $200 per month, let's say.
Mhm.
All right, for use of my AC, you'll pay extra money. If you want something else, it's additional to.
Right.
And then I will give tenants sometimes some breaks for good behavior.
Right.
So if they pay on time, they take care of my rental property, I may waive the cost of the appliance.
Right. Okay, that's
Right.
good.
So that's what is covered in the lease. It states who will be paying for what, and they have an option of saying yes or no. So let them initial there.
That's very
that, Yes,
important.
we agree to this, we agree to this, we agree to that.
Mhm.
Right? That way they can't say, hey,
I
we
didn't
don't
know. Yeah.
Right? So that's very important. So when we talk about appliances, we want to make sure that is being covered. Another aspect here that we want to talk about is the utilities.
Mhm. Now this is a very strange topic in many Peel region homes in Toronto as well, because it really depends on if everything is being rented on one level by one tenant or if they're taking the whole home. Now, how do you handle that, Jay?
Well, number one, if they're taking the whole home, you definitely want to get all the utilities transferred in their name.
Right.
The hydro and gas is easy to do because usually that is being done by the tenant. I find that now even the companies, hydro and gas companies, they will like the landlord to call in ahead of time.
Yep.
They will give them a number, an account number, and then the tenant calls.
And they pull it over, even with water as well. Now the landlord actually has to sign off saying that yes, these are my tenants, and they keep everything on file. It's much more detailed than it was a few years ago.
Right. Well, when it comes to water, water is more city.
Mm.
Because water is more city, it's the owner responsibility that's being paid. All that happened is that the owner is saying, hey, the city, I have this place rented, my tenant will be paying it. If my tenant don't
Yep.
pay, then you can come after me.
Yep.
Right? So that's really what you are signing when it comes to water. Other than that, it fall on your property tax.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So you got to do that. In some area, it's water and garbage, like in 416 area,
Right.
it's water and
Water and
garbage.
waste. Hmm.
Right. Now, you always, always, always want to put the utilities directly in the tenant name.
Yes.
I've seen many situations where the landlord said, no, I will pay it,
Hmm.
and then I will go and collect it back from the tenant.
Right.
Now, number one, you're adding one more step,
One more headache to your
one more
list.
headache
Mhm.
to your list of already many, many headaches.
Mhm.
Right? Number two, you are paying it up front and then hoping to collect it back later.
Mhm.
In the event of default, things get added up quickly.
Very much
Right?
so.
3 months rent, 3 months utility can add up very quickly.
Definitely. So this is really something that's designed to be put in the tenant's name just to protect yourself as a landlord.
Right. So you want that in the lease, and they must sign to it as well what they got in there.
Mhm.
Right? And now, as we move on, let's look at another area. We got 5 minutes more for this section. Now, question. What happened if you got a tenant and the tenant go bankrupt?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right? Or for some reason the tenant did not come home. There is a death in the family.
And they're gone. Mhm.
Right? Well, in terms of bankruptcy, you want to make sure that that clause is in your lease as well. That event your tenant go bankrupt, right? You become as one of the person to be able to
A
collect
debtor
that
and
money.
collector, really? Because
Right.
in majority of lease agreements or offers to lease, you won't find that in there. So that's very important.
It is very, very important to get that in it. What happened in case of bankruptcy? How would you be protected?
Right, not at all, unless you have that clause built in
Right, so
there.
you want to make sure that is in there as well. You want to cover that. You want to also cover in event of death. What will happen if you're and a spouse are renting or two-person? Automatically it transfer
Over to the other
to
person.
the other person,
Hmm.
right? Or the lease become null and void, and the occupancy have to leave in 30 days.
Right, right.
Right. So we want to make sure we get that built into our lease as well.
So it's better if these things are just all outlined upfront. That's the kind of takeaway from
Outline
here.
up front. I always prefer that even at the side of everything, that the side is a summary on our lease. And here, if you need a copy of our lease, please email us
Yeah.
at thebridge@thebridge.com, THEBRIJ at THEBRIJ.com, and we will be willing to send you a copy of
Yeah.
what we use. Okay? Or give us a call at 416 418 2745.
Yeah, and you can find all the data down below.
Right, yeah. Okay, beautiful. So we can get that done as well. So, Amit, the next portion that we want to talk is the use.
Use of the property. Now this is a very funny one because you would think while renting a residential property, people are going to be renting that place to live in.
Right.
But there's many different cases that I've seen with something as simple as subletting. Single family turning into two family.
Right.
And the landlord has no idea what's going on.
Well, it's right in here, built into this lease, stating that number one, they cannot sublet unless they have your consent to do so.
Yep.
Right, landlord and tenant board also say, hey, they have that option to sublet. Well, there are situations people get caught in. But then at the same time, you must be able to approve it as well, because
Yes.
you just don't want to get all kind of different tenants. Right? You have that option as well, right? So it does that. I've seen situation where they said, hey, we'll use it for residential purpose, and the next thing they're operating a business out of it.
Oh yes, remember you were telling us a few episodes ago about your one client or one tenant that ended up being a baker.
Yeah.
Mold throughout the entire home.
All throughout the entire house. So that's why you want to stipulate what the use will be.
Right.
It's strictly for residential purposes and nothing else. Anything else will void that lease.
Gotcha. So then you'll actually have the control to say, well, you've not used this correctly, and now this lease is voided.
Definitely. So you want to have that built into your lease as well.
And also use of premises. Now I've seen that, and realistically, the use of the premises and how things are done, like snow removal and all these things, that's very important to keep in here as well.
Extremely. That's right in here as well. That how they will be using the premise. For example, you will provide a property with set of light bulbs and fuses, etc. And when you're ready to take that property over, it will get that as well the same way.
Well, that's a good point, because Jay, you don't want to be running over there to change a light bulb for your tenant. So it's good that that's outlined in there.
Right, but in many cases people take it for granted. It's not outlined. And there's an old saying when it comes to real estate: when in doubt, write it out. Okay.
Very good.
So when in doubt, make sure it's in detail. It's written out in that agreement.
Well, there's even things as fine detail as cutting of the lawn. Now, in 416 and 905 now, they're really cracked down in recent
Right.
years. If your lawn is unruly and growing out, you can actually get a ticket for that, and that ticket goes to the owner of the property.
Well, I'll tell you this scenario. I got a ticket for one of my tenants that actually parked on the driveway, but one of the tires, about 6 inches, was on the grass.
Oh.
Next, I got a lovely photograph of it in the mail, and I went down to the Brampton court here and got fined for $250.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So you got to make sure these things are happen. I mean, it must be stipulated in the lease here that even something like that happen, then that bill can transfer back to the tenant.
Right.
Many tenants may have a car that don't have a license plate,
Oh yes.
and it's on the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
right? And next thing you'll get charged.
You'll get a ticket for that as well.
Right?
Yeah.
So
So
it must be in your rental agreement.
definitely. So things like that, the snow removal, exterior use of the premises, very, very interesting.
Now, snow removal is a very big thing,
Hmm.
right?
Should we look into that one at our next segment? It looks like
Yes,
we're out of time.
let's get into that when we get back. See you soon on our third segment.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Welcome back on Let's Talk Real Estate here with Jay Bridgeball and Amit Kanhai. Right now, we're going over some of the in-depth issues with leases and things that many people might not know that are very important to be held in lease. So, Jay, I think now we're going to be talking about snow removal and issues like that.
Yes, well, very important is liability,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've seen situation where tenant slip and fall and
Right.
sue the landlord based on the fact that, hey, you know what, the place was unsafe.
Right.
After in the courts, it came out very clearly, had the landlord had a clause in there stating that that's the responsibility of the tenant to shovel the snow, cut the grass, keep the place debris free, and make sure that they take care of all of those maintenance of common area,
Right.
then that onus would have been on the tenant and not transferred to
Oh.
the landlord.
So something as simple as one particular clause
Yes.
ended up nailing that landlord.
Definitely. So many people here, you know what, you're renting a rooming house. You're renting 5 rooms next to Humber College.
Oh, yes.
Now, make sure you got a lease with each one of your tenant there as well, and make sure you get into that lease that they're also responsible of shoveling the snow and keep the common area debris free.
Free from debris. And
Right.
Jay, that's extremely important when you get into issues, around colleges and universities, because the conditions are not always up to standard, and sometimes it falls on the landlord, and sometimes it's the tenant.
Right, and now basement apartments. It's many basement apartments out there, and many people said, "Hey, you know what? I don't need a lease for a basement apartment. Come, pay me cash, and move on." But that's very dangerous what you're doing as a landlord, right? Reason for it is number one: if the tenants slip and fall, or something happen, you will be in big trouble.
Yeah, you're on the
Right.
hook.
And even if you're collecting cash, the tenants have established that they are tenants.
All right. So the money is changing hands. So they've number one is
Right.
already established that they are a tenant. Also, there's issues with you as the owner not reporting these things to your insurance company.
That's another big one because you should, if you have tenants, that consider material fact, and material fact must be
Disclose.
given to your insurance provider as well as to your mortgage holder.
And you know what's a funny thing, the way insurance works, Jay. They always seem to underwrite the claim at the time of the claim, not at the time when you've given your payment for 6 years or 3 years. They don't underwrite until the time you claim.
Yeah, the time you claim, that's when they do the underwriting. And most of the time, people don't disclose these things because they said, hey, you know what, why should I and cause my insurance to go up? But that's, in hindsight, that's dangerous.
Oh yeah, because you're looking at something as simple as a 10 or 15 or $20 increase. That's really nothing over 6-7 years when you think of a slip and fall that could be a $500,000 lawsuit.
Lawsuit, yes. But that's built in right to here in here as
Very,
well.
very good.
That into our lease, it says that the tenant must also obtain third-party liability insurance and have the landlord as an event, everything happen, and landlord is protected.
And it's great because we also have in there that they have to initial and also represent and warrant that their fire insurance does not cover the content of the tenant.
Definitely. So that's a very important area to have in your lease document. Okay, now another very important area that we want to focus on is here.
Jay, before we get into that, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I have many people that have asked me this question, and it's a funny one. But when you have landlords that are not always keeping all their items up to par, fridge, stove, washer, whatever these things, lights, fixtures, is it okay for a tenant to withhold rent because these items are not fixed?
No, I don't think so. Bottom line is that you just can't, as a tenant, you just can't say, hey, my landlord is not doing this, so I'll do this. Right? At the same time, the landlord cannot also say, hey, because the tenant didn't pay me or didn't do this, I
won't fix these items, right?
Definitely. It's two
ways.
wrongs are not right.
Got you.
Right? Now, the most important thing is here, number one, as a landlord, and if you want to be a good landlord, this is your business. You got to serve your people.
Right.
You got to take care of your tenant. If they report that the fridge is not working, then get it looked after, right? A landlord can actually a tenant can actually apply for rent reduction in event the premise is not safe or to standard or have health issues or anything of these things.
And I guess that's one of those situations where landlord and tenant, they go to the landlord-tenant board and they make some applications and get the ball rolling.
That's why I keep appliances separate from the rental of the premise.
Interesting.
Right? That in event something happen, it does not affect your rent. Remember we say earlier on, we are renting these things separately.
Yes.
So that's why we separate them.
Then you see these things, Jay, they only really come to mind if you're having an issue.
Right.
You can go years and years and years and never needing one of these things to be outlined in the lease, and then as soon as it comes, you realize, well, that's
what's
simple.
happening. Right. In addition to your lease, it's good we also have that form. It's good to have a form that stipulate that the tenant and your landlord walk through the property and they check things off. This is working, that's good, that's good. Hey, just like you ever go and rent a car, you see what they do?
Yep. All the ding, is there dings? Did you recognize that scratch? Yeah.
All right. So similarly, you get a form that stipulate every little aspect in that property. And it's being documented and both parties sign off on it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I have a client of ours that's doing one of those just next month on the 15th, and we just call it as simple as that, the final walkthrough.
Yeah. So you get that done. So one before and after, that way, you know what, in event there's problem is going to be taken care of.
And you know what? Something that's very, very interesting. People don't always know, and landlords and tenants might not always know. The tenant is not responsible for normal wear and tear in the property. If the stove gets turned on and turned off and the door of the fridge keeps opening and closing, there's no issue to say that that is the tenant's fault because that's normal wear and tear.
That's true. That's very important to handle it that way. Now, also in the lease, right, document, in addition to appliances and all these different nice issues that we're talking about, we want to make sure that the fire protection is there as well.
Carbon monoxide, fire, yes, very important.
And we had that stated right in the lease that the tenant will maintain it, right? If they have any problem, they must call us or give us in writing as to the problem
Immediately.
and allow us to get in there to look after the problem.
Yes, because that's a very, very, very strict issue. Even when our clients purchase their, first, second, third, fourth investment properties, even if there's something in there that's working, a fire and carbon monoxide, and it transfers over with the home, I say, spend that extra $50, $100 and get a new one for every floor and install it, because this is your investment and it's people's lives.
Definitely. So you want to get that into your lease agreement as well, in the event sometimes that changes.
It's very important, like you said there, that the tenant will maintain it. Yeah.
Right. Now, how about pets?
Oh, that's always a hot button issue.
Yeah, it is hot button because number one, you want to stipulate in here also that whether they have pets or they don't have pets, yes or no, right? I mean, it's against the human right code to tell someone, hey, you can't move in here because of your pets. At the same token, they acquire a pet while they're there. You can't go ahead as a landlord and say, hey, you know what? You got to get rid of your pet.
Yeah. So if they sign the lease saying no pets, they don't have any pets, and then they all of a sudden, acquire a pet,
Right. You can't evict them based on that ground. However, that's why you want to have a clause that we have in here stating that if they have pets and any damage is being done by that pet, they will be responsible for that.
Oh.
Right. So you want to make sure that is being in there. That you can even go to the extent of saying, hey, you know what? Because you have pet, in the event when you have to leave, we will recommend A, B, and C. We want
steam cleaning and some sort of issues like that.
Right. You want that ductwork clean and all those things. So you can stipulate that and put an additional cost for this.
And you know what? That's very reasonable because people will understand there's going to be additional hairs. There's going to be maybe soiled carpet areas. So that's important.
Right. So it's important to stipulate that as well. Right. And also what's important is to get in that lease that we have here and come to pets, that they hold you as the landlord harmless in event something happened.
Oh.
What happened if you got a pit bull, you're the tenant, you got a pit bull and it bit someone or someone got injured really, really bad.
I can see that being a big issue.
They decide to sue. Who you think they will sue? The tenant?
They'll sue
and the landlord.
Yes.
So you want to get that in your lease.
A little bit of a protection there for you.
Right, saying that in the event of something like this happen, then they hold you harmless.
Definitely. That's important.
Yeah, so that's how we handle a pets issue. Right? We got many more things to cover, and we got less time. So here, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back and cover all the other nice things, what to get in
a lease document.
This holiday season, be sure to pick up your copy of the Toronto Caribbean newspaper and check out all the specials from local businesses right here in our community. Help build a bigger, better, and stronger community with your support. Happy holidays from the Toronto Caribbean newspaper. Available at your favorite Caribbean location or online at torontocaribbean.com.
Welcome back, guys. And this is Let's Talk Real Estate with Jay Bridgepal and AMIT. What we've been doing for the last few segments is just reviewing all of the nitty gritty inside of a lease, all the things that you may or may not know, and things that are important to understand. So right now, we're just going to be talking about some of the finer points, Jay.
Yes, and now the deposit that you collect from the tenant.
Mm,
Do you think it's illegal to to take their first and last month rent and take a rent for damage deposit?
Well, you see, everyone always says it's first and last, and there's always a gray area. It really depends on what the landlord asks. So tell us, Jay.
Well, what it is more important here, yeah. In the States, damage deposit is okay.
Yep.
In Canada, it's not okay.
Mhm.
But there is no reason why you can't say, hey, I want first and two last month rent.
Oh.
Right?
And how does that work then?
Well, really, what they will do, they can give you a first month
Mhm.
and give you two last month rent at the beginning. They're not your tenant at this point, but you can stipulate that
Mhm.
in the agreement. Okay? Now, what will happen though, make sure that the interest every year,
Right.
the interest that accumulated must be paid to the tenant back.
Oh, because they've given you this money up front.
Right. And usually the interest is being set by the landlord and tenant board.
Right.
And I find that it's about the same as that what you are allowed to increase the rent
Oh.
every year by.
So they base it sort of on inflation, and then they kind of change that number every year.
Right, that number is changed every year. You make sure if you want to give your tenant an increase, there is a prescribed form. You can go on the landlord and tenant board.
Right.
They have all the forms there.
Mhm.
And read up on it. It's a great area to educate yourself on.
Definitely. Well, that's
Right.
good.
And it will tell you everything in detail. Make sure anything to do with landlord and tenant, use the prescribed form.
Ah, yes. And you know what, Jay? It's we can at least tell some of our viewers. You know, even you and I have made some mistakes in the past, in the very early times. If you don't deliver those notices exactly on the time that are set out for, the entire thing becomes null and void.
It's very important that you brought that up. I could remember I had to evict one tenant, and they did. You have to give them 14 days notice that they did not pay their rent on time.
Hmm.
Happened so I calculate the day I give it to them, and the board says no, the day didn't start. It started the day afterward. They didn't caught it after 14 days. After 3 months, when we go to the final trial,
Right.
the judge looks through everything and says, hey guys, you guys got to start over. Your first initial step was wrong.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So I learned the hard way. I prefer to give it said 14 days. I prefer to give you 16 days.
Right. And when you
Right?
think about it, it does make sense, because if you're signing this on, Friday the 13th or the 12th, whatever date it is, you're giving it to them. The person technically doesn't have that full date to review the
Right, so it
document.
starts the next day.
Got you.
So give them that extra time.
Technicalities.
Technicalities can really mess you up as landlord. Right? What's important as well, tenants, if a tenant constantly pay late,
Yes, I was going to ask you that now.
what's important is also to still give them the form that, hey, you know what, you're paying us late, your lease has been terminated. They might pay you in a week or 2 weeks, but by giving them that form and keeping a copy of it, later on, if it's consistent, you can evict them based on the grounds of continuously paying you late.
So, even if the tenant says, well, hey, I'll have this money to you on Friday, you can say, yes, that's fine. And you just let them know, well, based on the books and how we run this business, this is our business. We would like to give you the notice saying your rent has been late. And then if you have 3, 4, 5, 6 of those, I guess it becomes a stronger case for you if you ever need to evict that tenant.
Well, I'll show you where the wisdom come in, Amit. You can take a tenant all the way up and say, hey, you know what, I'm evicting you based on the grounds that you're not paying your rent. Come to the final day, the eviction day, the tenant gave you all their money.
You
Everything
have,
is back to normal. You're evicting day one.
right.
But when you got to get rid of that tenant, if you can evict them based on two grounds. One, failure to pay rent, and two, failure to pay rent on time. So
Mm.
although they pay you up all their rent at the end after you go
Right.
through that whole 5 months process, they decide to pay your rent, you can still evict them on the grounds of
Oh.
constant late payment.
And you know what? It's good if you have all these documents in
Yes.
line and in order. So that's a good point.
Right. So
Now, are there any other fees associated with late rent payments, Jay? Because in some situations, I'll give you an example. The landlord or the tenant writes a check, and then the check bounces. You as the landlord, you're most likely going to get charged 750 or 1250, whatever it is your bank charges for you depositing a bounce check.
well, not that alone. To think about the inconvenience, right? Now you have to go and get a new check. You got to go to the bank. You got to do it. Or if you are paying someone to do it,
Right.
their time is not free.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you can put something that's reasonable as an administrative cost for that headache.
I've seen typically $45 somewhere in that
$50.
range.
Some people put $100, right? And they will say, hey, you know what? In the event you give me checks that are dishonored, this will be administrative fee.
Right, and you know what? It's also on the same token, the bank will then also charge the tenant in that situation, so they're gonna get it
Right.
on both ends.
Right, both ends. Well, what I tend to do most of the time with good tenants, I don't enforce.
Well, you know what,
That?
Jay? It's nice that these things are outlined in the lease, and
Yes.
then you as a landlord say, no, you've been a great tenant, and you just going on through a hard time. I'm gonna give you the form, but we're not gonna charge you the
Right,
fee.
that's a good way to go because you want to maintain a good relationship and they feel good about it as well, right? And that's important to help them along those lines.
Right.
In the first place, they haven't got money. That's why they.
Exactly. So
Right.
you don't want to get.
And then now you're putting more pressure on them
Right.
in that way. So you got to see with your tenants. Remember, this is a long-term business. You're doing it because of long-term, right? You're renting your basement. The tenant default a little bit. See with them a little bit. Work along those lines. But most important, get everything documented in your lease. Give them these things on time. Read through the lease in all details.
Yep.
Make sure that the tenants who are there are your tenants. Any other person,
Tenants
put them
versus
on
occupants,
occupancy.
right?
Make sure that's important. Even someone come in within a month or 2 months to live there, and not much you can do. But you may want to still get a form that tell them, hey, you are here.
New occupant.
You are an occupant as well, and take it from there.
Because these things are all the responsibility of the landlord, and a police or a firefighter, they're gonna look at you and say, "Well, this is your property. You don't know who's living in there."
Definitely. So that's why that's just very, very important to put that in your lease, right? And remember, if you are doing a rent increase, usually it's 90 days. It can be enforced within 90 days. So you give them the notice today.
Right.
It's not until 90 days you can really increase it. So make sure you give them on time, right? And what happens if you prepare a lease, right? And you give it to the tenant after that lease expires? If you don't have a new lease signed up, the law will deem that the original lease you had in place, what's in there counts.
Oh, so
all
even if you've verbally had a conversation about maybe a $25 increase, the original lease will be the one that's in place.
Well, definitely, the terms of the original lease are in place, right?
So it's always important to re-sign that.
It's
that
good to
lease.
resign, but if you don't resign, then all the contents of this lease is there. The price you have already given the price change, that's
Right.
okay, but the content and everything else the same. So they automatically fall in month-to-month tenancy, but the lease, the terms of the lease still exist.
Right. So these things are very important.
Many realtors I find out there just prepare an offer to lease.
Right.
And they put a clause in there saying that this offers to lease in the event of an absence of a lease becomes the lease. I encourage everyone to look above and beyond that because an actual lease agreement have a lot more things in it.
And well, Jay, it's not just down to that. You're protecting both the landlord and the tenant.
Yes.
Everything is plain and written up front.
Right, and it's simple language. It's designed that way for a purpose. Right, so that both parties can read it and understand. So in addition to an offer to lease, it's always good to get the lease.
All right, good stuff.
Now, before we close, on January the 20th, we are having this amazing workshop.
Oh yes.
And usually we get sometimes 30, 40, 50 people. It's all full.
I can imagine it's going to be a full house.
Yeah, some of the topics we want to cover then is really about market trends.
Right.
Right? We talk more about stress tests.
Mhm.
We'll discuss, everyone will have a copy of our lease that we are using.
Yes.
Right? We have a workbook that they will be able to work through different areas.
Definitely, it's going to be a fun-filled, very much educational session, and we'll be providing a little bit of snacks and whatnot. So definitely hope to see you guys there. Again, the date is
the date is the 20th. It's from 1 to 4. It's Saturday 20th from 1 to 4.
Yeah.
We encourage you to sign up. You can go and you have a piggybank.ca and sign up to come to this event.
Yeah.
Right? It's very educational. The whole idea is that the more educated you become in this area, you can make better financial decision for yourself and your
Definitely.
family. Right? See you in the new year. Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.